You finish your day. You look at your list. Everything is checked off. Emails answered. Meetings attended. Deliveries made. Everything is in place. But when you lie down, you realize you can't remember anything. Not vividly. Not as if you had really been there. It was more like watching your own life through a foggy glass. Nothing was wrong, but nothing seems to have been yours. You were present the whole day, but you weren't really there. And that feeling of having accomplished everything and yet having lost something is not new. It repeats itself every day, as if there were a continuous leak of time, of presence, of life lived, as if something were hijacking your attention while you insist on believing that you still control what you do. There is a book that no one should have read, not because it is dangerous, but because it reveals something that, once seen, can no longer be ignored. The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. It is a collection of fictional letters. A veteran demon, Screwtape, writes to his apprentice nephew Wormwood, teaching him how to corrupt a human soul. But it's not about spectacular temptations. It's not about scandalous vices or dramatic downfalls. It's about something much more efficient. It's about how to make someone lose themselves without realizing it. How to steal an entire life through mundane distractions. How to turn days into fog. And the most disturbing thing? Screwtape isn't describing fiction. He's describing you. In one of the letters, the demon writes to his apprentice, "The surest road to hell is gradual. The gentle slope, soft, without sharp turns, without landmarks, without signs. No abyss is needed. Routine is enough. Constant distraction is enough. Just make the person go through their days without ever living them." And when Screwtape teaches the central technique, keeping humans busy with small concerns, things that don't matter but seem urgent, you recognize the pattern immediately. Because that's exactly how you live. Your mind tired from thinking so much about tasks. The body present, but the consciousness always elsewhere. Planning tomorrow. Reviewing yesterday. Never here. Screwtape knew. Destruction doesn't need grand gestures. Just push the person out of the present. And leave them there. Lost in times that don't exist. Because the present, the only moment when you can live, decide, be, is too dangerous. It is where life truly happens. And that is why it needs to be stolen from you. Not by force, but by distraction, by habit, by normalizing absence. You didn't fall. You were subtly displaced. And you continue to be every day while you believe you are in control. Hell, as Screwtape teaches, doesn't need to push you. You're already walking there on your own. And the scariest part? You didn't even notice when it started. If there is such a precise method for stealing someone's presence, someone had to systematize it. And that's exactly what C.S. Lewis did, but in reverse. He wrote the Screwtape Letters as if he were revealing the behind the scenes of a hellish operation, a technical manual, detailed instructions on how to corrupt a human soul without them noticing. Not through obvious temptations, not through spectacular sins, but through banality, through routine, through everyday distractions that seem harmless. Screwtape, the veteran demon, writes to his nephew Wormwood with the patience of someone teaching a craft. And what he teaches is disturbing precisely because it is recognizable. He doesn't talk about monsters, he talks about you. In one of the letters, Screwtape instructs his apprentice, keep the patient busy with small concerns, things that don't matter but seem urgent. His mind will become so tired that he won't have the strength to seek what really matters. Read it again. It's not about destroying, it's about exhausting. It's not about violently distancing oneself from the essential. It's about keeping oneself too busy to seek it. And when you read this, the feeling is immediate. You know this tiredness. You know this mental saturation that means that, at the end of the day, there is no energy left for profound questions, for silence, for presence. Screwtape knew that the human mind has a limit to its attention span. And if that limit is constantly consumed by trivialities, there will be no room left for what gives meaning. It's a strategy of occupation, not of territory, but of consciousness. And the scariest thing is to realize that this is not fiction. It's a diagnosis. Lewis was describing a pattern he saw operating in real life, a way of living that has become so normal that no one questions it. Life divided into tasks, time fragmented into blocks of productivity, the mind always rushing to the next demand. And in the midst of it all, the person disappears. They don't die, they just are absent. Hannah Arendt, while studying the crimes of Nazism, coined the expression, the banality of evil. She realized that the horror did not come from monsters but from ordinary people who simply obeyed, followed orders, followed routines, without ever stopping to think. Screwtape teaches exactly that. Evil does not need heroic gestures. All it takes is a lack of reflection. All it takes is the habit of living on autopilot. And that is where the silent danger lies. Because when you live on autopilot, you are not choosing. You are just reacting, complying, executing. And every day that passes like this is a day that slips by without leaving a mark, without weight, without presence. Screwtape doesn't need to push anyone into the abyss. It is enough to keep the person distracted enough so that they do not realize they are walking toward the void. And the method works because it is invisible, because it disguises itself as normality, because no one wakes up one day and thinks, I am being manipulated by routine. The person just feels that something is wrong, that time is passing too quickly, that nothing seems enough, but they never connect the dots. They never realize that the feeling of emptiness is not an individual failure. It is the result of a structural pattern, of a way of life that has been normalized. And Screwtape laughs, because he got what he wanted. A whole life wasted without the victim even realizing they were being robbed. He writes in another letter with cruel cynicism, "It's funny how mortals always portray the state they call peace of mind as desirable. What we really need is to keep them indecisive, terrified of reality, but convinced that they are rational and prudent. The trap is there, making the person believe that they are in control, that they are being careful, that they are just managing responsibilities, when in fact they are just surviving, complying, procrastinating, and never really living. This is the gentle slope that Screwtape describes. There are no sharp turns, there are no signs, there are no landmarks. It's just a slow, steady, imperceptible decline. And when the person finally realizes where they are, they've already lost years, decades, maybe their whole life, not because they fell, but because they never stopped to look where they were stepping. Lewis's book works like a mirror image. When you read Screwtape's advice, you don't see the demon. You see yourself. You see your daily choices, your justifications, your habits that you never question. And you realize that somehow you are following the manual to the letter, not because you are evil, but because you have been conditioned to live this way, to believe that this is the only possible way to exist. But Screwtape reveals that it is not the only way. It is just the most convenient. Convenient for whom? For the system that needs you to keep producing, consuming, reacting, but never stopping, never questioning, never being. And Lewis' genius lies in using the demonic voice to tell truths that no one would dare to say directly. Because if he wrote, "You're wasting your life on trivialities," it would sound like judgment. But when Screwtape says, "Keep him busy with trivialities," it sounds like revelation, as if you were discovering the secret, the code, the hidden strategy. And suddenly everything makes sense. The constant exhaustion, the feeling of always running but never arriving, life slipping away before you can grasp it. It's not your fault, it's the method. And the method was designed to be invisible, so you would never realize you were being led. But now you know, and knowing changes everything. Because the first rule of any manipulation is, it only works as long as it remains hidden. The moment it is exposed, it loses its power. And Screwtape has just been exposed. But knowing the method is only the beginning, because it doesn't operate alone. There is a second layer, a deeper movement. And that's where the strategy becomes really dangerous. The first movement is not dramatic. It's subtle, almost imperceptible. Screwtape teaches his apprentice that the secret lies in occupying the mind with small things, not with big problems, not with existential dilemmas, but with urgent trivialities, because the human brain does not differentiate well between what is important and what is urgent. And if you can keep someone constantly dealing with trivial urgencies, importance will never have a place. That's how it works. You wake up, you pick up your phone, you check your notifications, you reply to messages, you check your emails, you look at social media. And before you even have your coffee, your attention has already been fragmented in 20 different directions. None of them essential, but all with the appearance of urgency. And the day goes on like this. A meeting that could have been an email that generates 3 more tasks that generate more meetings. And in the midst of it all, the to-do list grows. It always grows, because the logic of modern productivity is not to finish. It is to continue. There is always one more thing. There is always the next item, and you comply, because you've been trained to do so. But at the end of the day, when you finally stop, you realize that you don't remember thinking about anything. Not really, you just reacted, you executed, you responded, and Screwtape smiles. Because that's exactly the goal, to keep the mind so busy with the superficial that it never has the energy for the profound. He writes in one of his letters, "Our task is to make each day run out in trifles, without you ever realizing that time has been wasted." Trifles, not bad things, not vices, not sins, just trifles. Small worries, small demands, small urgencies, which added up, consume your entire life. And the worst part is that it doesn't seem wrong. It seems responsible. because you're getting things done. You're being productive, you're handling it. But what exactly? Tasks that will multiply again tomorrow. Demands that never cease. A wheel that spins without moving. And meanwhile, the essentials are always left for later. When I have time, I'll read that book. When things calm down, I'll talk to that person. When I finish this, I'll think about what really matters. But the time never comes. Things never calm down. And it never ends. Because the structure was made for that. To keep you busy. Always busy. And the exhausted mind can't resist. It just complies. Screwtape knew that it is not necessary to destroy the ability to think. It is enough to tire it out. Because a tired mind does not seek meaning. It only seeks rest. And the rest it finds is also distraction. Endless scrolling. Series. Fast content. Constant stimulation. Never silence. Never pause. Never presence. And the cycle closes. You work all day on tasks that mean nothing. And you rest at night with distractions that also mean nothing. And in the midst of it all, life slips away. Not because you chose poorly, but because you never had the space to actually choose. The strategic occupation of the mind is this: to keep the consciousness always full, always saturated, always running, so that it never stops, never questions, never lives. And the scariest thing is that this has become normal. No one finds it strange to live like this. No one questions it, because everyone lives like this. It's routine, it's expected, it's what you do. And Screwtape teaches that this is the ultimate victory. When prison becomes so common that no one recognizes it as prison anymore. When people defend their own distraction as if it were freedom. When they believe that being busy is being alive. But it's not. Being busy is just being busy. Living is something else. Living requires presence. It requires attention. It requires being here. And here is exactly what has been stolen from you. Not by force, but by saturation. Through exhaustion. Through normalization. There is something deeply perverse about this strategy, because it uses the victim itself as an accomplice. You don't realize you're being robbed because you believe you're just fulfilling your obligations. And every time you cross another item off the list, you feel a small satisfaction, a momentary relief, as if you were making progress. But progress toward what? More tasks, more demands, more of the same. Screwtape knew that human beings have a deep need to feel that they are moving forward, that they are doing something. And the to-do list offers exactly that illusion. You cross items off, you see progress, you feel like you're in control, but it's control over the irrelevant. Progress that leads nowhere. It's like being on a treadmill. You run, you sweat, you get tired, but you don't move. And the worst part is that when you finally stop, you realize you don't even know where you are going, because you never stopped to ask. You never had time to ask. And that's the genius of the strategy. It doesn't need to stop you from questioning. It just needs to keep you too busy to have the energy to question. When the mind is saturated, it loses its capacity for deep reflection. It can execute, it can react, it can comply, but it can't think. Not really. Not about what matters. And that's exactly what Screwtape wants. A humanity that executes but doesn't reflect. That complies but doesn't question. That lives but isn't really alive. And now the question that begins to bother you is, if your mind has been occupied, if your attention has been fragmented, where are you really? Because it's not in the present. That much is clear. So, where? And that's where the strategy reveals its deepest layer. Because occupying the mind is just preparation. The real blow happens in time. Occupying the mind is just preparation. The real blow happens when Screwtape displaces you from the only time you really have, the now. In one of the most revealing letters, he instructs his apprentice with surgical precision. It is your duty as servants of our Father to steal the present from men. We give them the illusion that the past can be changed or that the future belongs to them. But all we have to do is divert their attention from the present, the only point of contact between time and eternity. Read that sentence again. The present is not just another moment on the timeline. It is the only real moment. The past has already happened. You cannot change it. You can only carry it as a burden or as a lesson. The future does not yet exist. You cannot control it. You can only project it as expectation or fear. But the present is yours. It is the only space in which you can act, decide, feel, live. And that is exactly why Screwtape wants to take it away from you. Because if you are here now, truly present, you are free. Free to choose. Free to change. Free to be. And that is too dangerous. So he does what he has always done. He displaces you. Not with violence, but with subtlety. He pushes your mind into the past. Into regrets, into hurts, into versions of yourself that no longer exist. And you get stuck there, replaying conversations, remembering mistakes, wishing you had done things differently, as if it were possible to change what has already happened. Or it pushes your mind into the future, to worries, to catastrophic scenarios, to possibilities that may never come to fruition. And you get stuck there too, anticipating pain, imagining failures, preparing for battles that may never happen. And while you are lost between what was and what could be, what is escapes you. The present moment goes unnoticed, and you don't even notice, because your consciousness is not here. It is somewhere between yesterday and tomorrow, in a time that does not exist. Screwtape knew that human beings have a natural tendency to flee from the present, because the present demands something frightening: presence. And presence means confrontation with reality, with who you really are, with what you really feel, with the choices you really need to make, and that hurts. It's easier to take refuge in the past, where everything has already been decided, or in the future, where everything is still a possibility. But in the present, you cannot escape. You are forced to be, and being is difficult, so you distract yourself. You project, you reminisce, you plan, anything to avoid being here. And Screwtape laughs, because he got what he wanted. You spent another day absent from your own life, physically present, mentally distant, and life went on, as it always does. But you weren't there to live it. There was a Danish philosopher, Søren Kierkegaard, who deeply understood this dynamic. He said that anxiety is the vertigo of freedom. When you are in the present, you are free, free to choose, free to act. And that freedom is terrifying, because freedom means responsibility. It means that what you do matters. It means there are no excuses. So you run away, to the past where you can blame circumstances, or to the future where you can postpone decisions. But you never stay in the present, because the present allows no escape. And Screwtape uses exactly that against you. He keeps you in constant anticipation. If you fear what is to come, you are already partially overcome. If you long for what you dream of, you are equally lost. For your mind never rests where life really happens. The strategy is perfect, because both fear and hope can be used as distractions. It doesn't matter if you're terrified of the future or excited about it. In both cases, you are not here. And while you are not here, you are not living. You are just projecting. And projection is not life, it is escape. The present for Screwtape is enemy territory, because it is there that you can find something he cannot touch: eternity. Not eternity as infinite duration, but eternity as depth, as intensity of presence. When you are truly present, completely here now, time changes in quality. It's not about how much time you have, it's about how much you are in the time you have. And that's exactly what Screwtape wants to prevent. He writes to his apprentice, "The present is the point where time touches eternity. If they fix themselves on it, they may find the enemy. Therefore, it is vital to keep them away from it, either by anticipated pain or by dreamed of pleasure." The clarity of this instruction is devastating, because it reveals that your anxiety is not just a psychological symptom. It is a tool, a way to keep you away from the only moment you could truly live. And it works. You spend your days worrying about what hasn't happened yet, planning, fearing, imagining. And when the moment you've been anticipating finally arrives, you're already worried about the next one. It never stops. It never rests. It never is. And your whole life becomes a sequence of anticipations that are never fully lived. Because when you live projected out of the present, you don't really live. You just wait. Wait for the right moment. Wait for the perfect conditions. Wait for the future to finally arrive and bring you what you seek. But the future never arrives, because when it arrives, it becomes the present. And if you haven't learned to live in the present, you won't know how to live in the future when it becomes now. You'll just keep waiting, forever. And Screwtape wins, because he managed to make you go through your whole life without ever really living it. Always arriving, never arrived. Always preparing, never ready. Always planning, never present. And when you realize it, it's already past. Not because time is up, but because you were never really in it. And now the question that won't go away remains: how did this happen without you noticing? How did you accept living like this? And the answer is simple, but painful, because it was sold to you as prudence. Screwtape doesn't fight anxiety, he cultivates it, because he discovered that an anxious mind is a controllable mind, and the genius lies in disguising anxiety as something virtuous, as caution, as responsibility, as prudence. He writes to his apprentice with almost palpable satisfaction. Keep him imagining what tomorrow will be like, what problems he may face, what pains will come. Let him dream of grand futures or fear impending disasters, as long as he never stops what he is doing now. The strategy is brilliant, because it makes you believe you are preparing yourself, when in fact you are just paralyzing yourself, that you are being careful, when in fact you are running away, that you are planning when in fact you are procrastinating, and you buy into this narrative without question, because anxiety seems rational, it seems smart to anticipate problems, it seems sensible to worry, it seems prudent to be afraid. But there is a subtle and crucial difference between prudence and paralysis. Prudence is looking to the future and making decisions in the present. Paralysis is getting stuck in the future and never acting in the present. And modern anxiety is almost always paralysis disguised as prudence. You're not preparing, you're consuming yourself. You're not planning, you're ruminating. You're not acting, you're just worrying. And Screwtape knows exactly how to feed that. He doesn't need to invent your fears, they're already there. He just needs to amplify them, repeat them, keep them active, and the mind does the rest. Because the human brain has a negativity bias, an evolutionary tendency to focus on what can go wrong. This made sense when you needed to survive predators. But today it has become a trap, because there are no predators. But the mind continues to function as if there were. And every notification, every deadline, every social expectation, everything becomes a threat. And you live in a constant state of alertness, of tension, of preparation for a danger that rarely materializes. But anxiety doesn't care about what's real. It feeds on what's possible, and possibilities are endless. So you can spend your whole life imagining catastrophes, planning escapes, building defenses, for battles that never happen. And meanwhile, real life, the one that's happening right now, goes unnoticed. Screwtape writes cynically, if we can keep him stuck in these images, then we take him away from the only point where reality is accessible to him, because reality only exists in the present. And if you're stuck in future scenarios, you're not in reality. You are in fiction, in projection, in illusion. And a life lived in illusion is a wasted life. But the worst part is not just that. The worst part is that anxiety feeds on itself. The more you worry, the more tired you get. The more tired you get, the less energy you have to act. The less you act, the more worries you accumulate. And the cycle closes. You get stuck in an endless loop, worrying about things you haven't done, things you can't do because you're too worried. And Screwtape doesn't need to do anything else. He just needs to keep the loop active, and you destroy yourself, without realizing you've been manipulated, without realizing you've collaborated, without realizing you've accepted to live like this. There is a phrase he writes that sums it all up. Our business is to make them fear the future, to occupy themselves with probabilities and suppositions. If we can keep them tied to these images, then we take them away from the only point where reality is accessible to them. And when you read that, you realize that's exactly what happens. You spend your days not living but imagining. Imagining what could go wrong, imagining what you need to do, imagining how it will be, but never being. And imagination without presence is just escape, a sophisticated way of not being here. And Screwtape wins again, because he managed to turn your own mind into a prison. You don't need walls, you don't need guards. Anxiety is enough. And you remain voluntarily imprisoned, believing that you are being careful, that you are protecting yourself, when in fact you are just absent from life, from the present, from yourself. And now, if you are feeling this, if you recognize this pattern operating in you, you need to continue, because what comes next reveals why you accept it, why you collaborate with your own distraction, why deep down you prefer anxiety to confrontation with reality. And understanding this changes everything. The most uncomfortable question is not how Screwtape manages to manipulate you. It's why you allow it. Why even knowing you're distracted, you remain distracted. Why even feeling that life is slipping away, you don't change. Why you contribute to your own absence. And the answer is disturbing. Because being present hurts, not physically, but existentially. Being here, now completely present, means confrontation. Confrontation with who you really are, with what you really feel, with the choices you really need to make. And that's scary, because while you are projected into the future or stuck in the past, you can postpone decisions, you can postpone responsibilities, you can postpone your own life, but in the present, there is no postponing. You are forced to be, and being is difficult. Kierkegaard called this the vertigo of freedom. When you are present, you are free, completely free. And freedom is not comfort, it's a burden, because it means your choices matter, that you are responsible, that there are no excuses, and that responsibility is terrifying. So you run away, not consciously, not as an explicit decision, but as an automatic pattern, as a deep-rooted habit. You lose yourself in worries, in tasks, in distractions, anything to avoid having to be here, so you don't have to face reality. And Screwtape knows this exactly. He writes, The enemy wants them to focus on the present, because in it freedom is real. For us, it is preferable that they spend their energy on fantasies of tomorrow or pains of yesterday, because fantasies and pains are safe. They don't require action. They don't require change. They don't require you to be different. You can carry regrets forever without ever having to change anything. You can cultivate anxieties forever without ever having to actually act. It's comfortable in a way, paralyzing, but comfortable because it protects you from risk, from failure, from the possibility of making mistakes. If you never act, you never fail. If you never decide, you never make mistakes. If you are never present, you never have to face the truth about yourself. And that is exactly what Screwtape exploits. He does not push you toward evil, he keeps you in inertia, in constant mediocrity, in a life without intensity, where nothing is terribly wrong, but nothing is truly alive, and you accept it, because it is easier. Easier than facing your own existence, easier than taking responsibility, easier than truly living. Screwtape writes with satisfaction. By keeping the patient busy with non-existent futures, we rob him not only of happiness, but also of obedience. For it is in the present that he can act, love, resist. Take that away, and all that remains is a shadow of a man. A shadow, not dead, but not alive, just existing, completing tasks, surviving, getting through the days, but never truly inhabiting any of them. And the worst part is that this becomes your identity. You start to believe that this is who you are, anxious, distracted, overwhelmed, as if it were a personality trait, as if there were no choice. But that's not who you are. It's just how you learn to escape. And Screwtape uses that. He turns escape into character, paralysis into identity, so that you never question, so that you never change, so that you continue living as a shadow, forever. And life goes by, not because you don't have time, but because you're never in the time you have, not because you don't have opportunities, but because you're too busy worrying about them to take advantage of them, not because you can't change, but because change requires presence, and you're not present. And then comes the most painful revelation. You're not trapped by external circumstances. You're trapped by internal patterns, by repetitive habits of thought, by automatic escapes you've never questioned, by a way of life that has been normalized. And normalization is the most efficient prison, because you don't realize you're trapped. You think you're just living, when in fact you're just avoiding living. And Screwtape laughs, because he has managed to turn you into an accomplice to your own absence. You don't need to be pushed. You walk alone, not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of being present, fear of being free, fear of truly living. And as long as fear rules, Screwtape wins, because you remain absent, you remain scattered, you remain lost between times that do not exist. And life, the only one you have, continues to pass you by, without you. But recognizing this changes everything, because the moment you see the pattern, it loses its power. The moment you understand the strategy, you can resist. And that's when the awakening begins, not as a magic solution, but as irreversible awareness. You can no longer pretend you don't know, and no longer knowing is the beginning of everything. There comes a moment when you can no longer pretend. You've seen the method, you've recognized the pattern, you understand how Screwtape operates. And now you carry something that cannot be unloaded, awareness. Awareness that you spent years absent, that you went through entire days without really being in any of them, that life was happening while you were busy worrying about it. And this awareness does not bring relief, it brings discomfort. Because it is irreversible, you can no longer look at your own routine in the same way. You can no longer accept distraction as neutral. Every time you pick up your phone unnecessarily, you know what you're doing. Every time you get lost in worries about the future, you recognize the pattern. Every time you go through the day on autopilot, you feel the absence. And that bothers you. Because before, when you didn't know, you could just live like that. It was automatic, it was normal. But now that you know, every absence becomes a choice. And choosing to remain absent, knowing that you are absent, is much heavier than simply being absent out of habit. Screwtape knew this too. In one of the letters, he warns his apprentice about the danger of awakening. If he begins to see the game, everything becomes more difficult. Unconsciousness is our greatest ally. When it breaks, we have to work twice as hard. Because unconsciousness allows you to live in the pattern without questioning it. But consciousness breaks the pattern. It exposes the gears, it reveals the choice. And once revealed, there is no hiding it again. You can try. You can try to return to comfortable distraction. You can try to convince yourself that you didn't see what you saw, but it doesn't work, because now you know. And knowing changes everything. It changes the way you see your days. It changes the way you feel time passing. It changes the feeling of looking back and realizing that you don't remember anything with intensity. Before it was just emptiness, now it's conscious emptiness. And conscious emptiness hurts more because it carries the perception of waste, of lost opportunity, of a life that could have been lived but wasn't. And then comes the dangerous temptation, guilt. Guilt for wasting so much time, for being so absent, for letting life slip away. But guilt is just another trap, because guilt also takes you out of the present. It throws you into the past. It makes you ruminate on what has already been, on what can no longer be changed. And while you are stuck in guilt, you continue not living in the now. Screwtape loves that, because if he can't keep you absent through distraction, he tries to keep you absent through guilt. Same result, different methods. You remain outside the present. You remain lost in times that don't exist, and life keeps passing you by. So awakening requires something difficult. Forgiveness. Not romantic forgiveness, not superficial self-pity, but simple recognition that you were conditioned, that you didn't know, that you were operating on autopilot because it was the only way you knew. And now you know. And knowing is enough. You don't have to carry the weight of all the days you spent absent. You just need to not lose anymore. But that's easier said than done, because the pattern is deep. It's ingrained. It has been repeated thousands of times. And breaking a pattern doesn't happen with a single decision. It happens through constant practice, by noticing again and again when you are absent, and choosing to return, by noticing again and again when the mind wanders, and bringing it back, by recognizing again and again when distraction calls you, and resisting. It's not about perfection, it's about awareness. And awareness, when sustained, creates change, not spectacular change, not instant transformation, but slow erosion of the old pattern, and gradual construction of a new one. And that's where hope lies. Not in magical promises, not in quick fixes, but in the real possibility of inhabiting your own life again, of being here, of feeling this, of living now. Simone Weil, a French philosopher, said that absolute attention is prayer, because attention is presence, and presence is sacred, not necessarily in a religious sense, but in the sense that it is the only moment when you are truly alive. And to regain attention is to regain life, not the life that has passed, that is gone, but the life that is still here, now, waiting to be lived. And Screwtape loses power because his method depends on your absence. And if you are present, really present, he has nowhere to get you. He cannot manipulate you with future worries if you are not in the future. He can't trap you in past regrets if you're not in the past. He can't exhaust you with trivialities if you recognize what is trivial. Presence is resistance. And resistance doesn't have to be heroic. It just has to be constant. But awakening also comes at a cost. Because when you wake up, you see not only your own absence, but the absence around you. You see people living in the same pattern, scattered, projected, absent, and you cannot save them, because each one needs to awaken for themselves. Each one needs to see the pattern. Each one needs to choose to return. You can point it out, you can share it, you can offer the possibility, but you cannot force awareness. And that also hurts, seeing so many lives being wasted in the same way yours was, and not being able to do anything but live differently. But living differently is already a lot, because conscious existence is rare, and when it happens, it inspires, not through words, but through presence. People notice when someone is really there, when someone is not just going through the motions, but living, and that creates a crack. Small, subtle, but real. A crack in the automatic pattern, a crack in the normalization of absence. And maybe that's enough, not to change the world, but to stop collaborating with the method that steals life, and to live, truly, the time that remains. Because Screwtape wins when you go through existence as a shadow, and loses when you inhabit your own life with intensity. Even if it's just one day, even if it's just one moment, that moment is already a victory, because it's yours, truly yours. And no one, not even Screwtape, can steal what you are actually living. He can only steal what you let pass unnoticed. And you won't let that happen anymore, not because of a promise, but because of practice. And the practice starts now, not tomorrow, not later. Now, there is no magic formula. There is no secret technique that will give you back all at once all the years you spent absent. What exists is simple, so simple that it seems insufficient. But it's all there is, the next moment. Not the whole day, not the week, not the rest of your life. Just the next moment. And the choice to be in it. For real. Screwtape taught the strategy of keeping you projected, scattered, absent. And resistance is not spectacular. It's the opposite of that. It's bringing your attention back. Again, and again, and again. Every time your mind wanders, you notice it. and you come back. Every time the future calls you with anxiety, you breathe, and you come back. Every time the past pulls you with regret, you let go, and come back. Coming back is not failing. Coming back is the practice, because the mind has been trained to be absent for years, for decades, and undoing that conditioning doesn't happen in a day, but it happens, one moment at a time, and every moment inhabited is a moment recovered. It's not about perfection. It never was. It's about direction, about intention, about repeated choice, and the choice is always the same: to be here, here, where life happens, where you can feel, act, decide, where you are not a shadow, you are presence. Simone Weil said that attention is the rarest and most generous form of love, because to give true attention to something is to honor its existence, and to give true attention to one's own life is to honor one's own existence. It is to say, I am here, I choose to be here, not because it is easy, but because it is the only place where I can truly live. And this is not therapy. It is not forced optimism. It is recognition of the real. The real is that the present is all you have. The past does not return. The future does not arrive. There is only this, now, and either you live it or you let it pass. And letting it pass, now that you know, is no longer automatic. It is a conscious choice. And consciously choosing absence hurts more than being absent out of habit. So you come back, not because you are enlightened, not because you have transcended, but because you realize that absence is wasteful, and waste, when conscious, becomes unbearable. So you start to notice the little things, the taste of coffee, the temperature of the air, the sound of breathing, things that have always been there, but you never noticed because you were never really here. And when you realize it, something changes. It doesn't change outside, it changes inside. The quality of the experience changes. Time ceases to be the enemy, something that slips away too quickly, and becomes space. Space to live, to feel, to be. And Screwtape loses, not because you won an epic battle, but because you stopped collaborating. You stopped voluntarily being absent. You stopped running away from the present. And when you stop running away, life becomes livable again. Not perfect, not free from pain, not without challenges, but yours, truly yours. And that is enough, because life doesn't have to be extraordinary to be worthwhile. It just needs to be lived. And you spent too much time not living, too much time absent, too much time lost in times that don't exist. But that's over now, not because you've solved everything, but because you've noticed the pattern. And a noticed pattern can be broken. Not always, not perfectly, but enough. Enough for you to start inhabiting your own days again. Enough for you to feel the difference between being and just existing. Enough for you to realize little by little that life hasn't passed you by. It's still here, waiting for you to return. And you did return. Not all at once, not completely, but you started. And starting is everything. Because Screwtape taught the method. But you learned resistance. And resistance is not war. It is presence. Constant presence. Repeated attention. Sustained choice. And every moment you are truly here is a moment Screwtape cannot touch. Because the present, as he himself admitted, is enemy territory. And now you know why. Because it's the only place where you are free. Where you can choose. Where you can change. Where you can live. And freedom is scary. But it also liberates. And you no longer want to live as a shadow. You want to live as a presence. And that starts now. Not tomorrow. Not after you've sorted everything out. Now. At this instant. At this moment. Which is the only one you really have. And it's the only one you really need. Because if you live this moment, truly, the next one becomes possible. And then the next. And the next. And little by little, you rebuild the ability to inhabit your own life. Not as a future project, but as a present practice. And Screwtape, who taught the gentle slope, discovers that resistance is also gentle. It is not a scream. It is breathing. It is not a struggle. It is a return. It is not a spectacular transformation. It is repeated presence. And repeated presence is life regained. One breath at a time, one moment at a time, until you realize that you are no longer walking alone toward the abyss. You are walking back, home, to the present, to yourself. And that is not the end. It is the beginning. What part of your life do you realize you are living more in projection than in presence? Tell us in the comments. I want to hear from you. Watch the next videos on the channel. Count on me and follow the White Rabbit.